Welcome everyone back to the Island 54 dev stream. So we are live in theory on both Twitch and on YouTube. I will confirm those in just a moment though. Where we finished off yesterday, I had a bunch of bugs. I have corrected a bug in the coordinate system that was causing a lot of the problems. I've also fixed a bug in the query code. Now the coordinate bug is likely also a bug in the client code, and I suspect it's what's causing those little fans that you see in my terrain sometimes. So that'll be good to get that fixed over there as well. What else have I done? I also made a change to the troll model, to the troll component, components. I added this new component type called #agent. I plan on using the hash symbol to indicate that something is a server-side only component. That may change in the future. This will let me not have to worry about having specific AI just for the troll. So here I just say that it is an aggressive behavior, figure a couple of parameters, and I can write AI to not be aware of the fact that it's a troll. Hello, Dogs Cray Cray, and welcome to the stream. I appear to have something wrong with my settings over here, so I'm not seeing chat where I'm expecting to. That's okay. I'll just move my windows around, and I can now see chat in a different window. So what I'm going to be working on today is managing the troll's aggro target. So when a player gets close, it's going to become aggressive to the player, and it needs to remember that it's aggressive to the player between ticks. If the aggressive target then gets too close, then it's going to need to be able to deal damage to that target. And if I get time and if the maths isn't too complicated, I'll also try getting it so that the troll is able to turn towards its aggressive target. I'm not sure if it's going to be sort of too much mental effort for me to talk and write that code at the same time. We'll see how I'm going. So the first thing I'm going to do is get on to managing the aggro target. To do that, I'm going to have to insert this new troll into my entity service. So I'll delete out the existing entities. Let me know if there's anything wrong with my sound. I think we've got 3 people in at the moment. So yeah, let me know how my sound is. So we will get this new troll entity inserted. Hello again, Northern Code, and welcome back. Okay, so we now have the troll in. Now just to demonstrate, you've all seen, anyone who was in here yesterday saw this received 1 entities on tick, that's the troll being detected, and then found 0 players near the agent, that's the player not being detected. If we load a player in now, you can see that it is finding the player, and if I move away, it no longer finds the player. Move towards the troll, and it finds the player. So that's that query code working now. And hello, Nocturnal Wisp. Okay. So the way I'll store the aggro is I'll probably put another component on here. I'm not going to add it from the command line. This will be managed from the server itself. But just to show you what it'll look like, it'll probably be something like #agent.state or something. And then within here, it will store some attributes such as aggro target. And then in here, it might include do I have a shortcut for, I don't think I do. I used to have a shortcut for injecting random UUIDs, but in here it'll have a UUID for the player that it's targeting. Further down the line, once it's attacking, we also need to have things like an attack cooldown. they'll get added in as well, and there'll be a timestamp on that. So I won't keep that in here because I don't want to accidentally insert any AI state. One moment, sorry. I'm being given snacks. Okay. So back to the code. I am in the code. Controller. I used to be able to see, this is completely off topic, how many... everyone who has joined is in YouTube at the moment. There's no one in Twitch. I'm hoping that Twitch gets a little bit of kind of organic people just looking for devlogging and having to pop in. Okay. So where is my ticker? Ticker. There it is. So beforehand, we were looking for components called mob, but now we want to look for a component called agent. Because these are the... I think it was a donut. So I might turn my camera and microphone off at some point to munch on that, rather than have you guys put up with me eating. What have we got here? So we receive the entities on the tick. We are then going to still search for player. I mean, it should be making sure that the, what was it? The behavior is aggro. Well, let's do that. Let's do if entity dot component. I'll write that later. It's just going to be fiddly code. I'll probably write a common function that allows me to extract a specific component from an entity rather than having to filter over all the components every time. That way I can effectively say, I'll do it as a comment, to do if entity.component. You're right. Hashtag agent dot behavior not equal to aggro, then continue. Otherwise, we find the player. We should probably be filtering for the closest player or the noisiest player or something like that. For now, we're just going to say if player.length is less than 1, then continue. That will continue on to the next troll. There are multiple in here. Otherwise, that shouldn't be player, that should be players. Because we could get multiple players coming out. But in here, const, we'll just choose whatever one comes back. Player 0. Players. Okay, now all we need to do is we need to say that, well, for now, I'll just always override the mob's aggro with this. So we'll just say set mob's aggro target. And then in here, what's the best way of doing this? Again, I'll need library functions for all of this to simplify it, because this code's going to be really ugly. I'm going to have to call out to the entity client. So this is going to go off and talk to the entity server. And we're going to have to send an update for new... Oh, this needs to be an update like that. And what does an entity update look like? We need to give it an entity ID, which is going to be entity.id. It's nice and easy. Unfortunately, this uses a different format. So I wrote a class called UUID from hex, because this entity ID is just a hex string. It might have dashes in it, but I handle that. And then we need to convert this to a proto ID. It's just the interface that I'm using when talking to the entity server. We also need to set the update type to update, saying we're not going to delete something, we're actually changing a value. Hello, Hellfire Squid. I think you're the first viewer on Twitch. So yeah, welcome. We have got, that needs to import. Not sure why that's not working. We need to set a component. So in here, we are going to set a component back into here. Generic components is an array of component updates. First one, we need a type. This one is going to be hashtag agent dot agent dot. No, I decided, yeah, agent dot state. Let's call it that. So for anyone who's not familiar, yes, the YouTube people do outnumber the Twitch folk 10 to 1. It's not overly surprising because we do have a few subscribers that get notified on YouTube when the streams go live. If anyone wants to encourage their friends to get over on Twitch, then feel free to do that. But for anyone new to this project, I am working on building an MMO, a survival crafting, hyper-realistic MMO, and I'm currently working on the first AI for a troll. Okay, so we're going to add some agent state. What else do we do? Update type, again, has to be... I don't know why it's not getting update type. Maybe I need to do... I think it's not getting these types imported. So what I'm going to do, for now, I'm going to hard code it. It's to 0 to say that this is, in fact, an update. Getting something working the first time is really all about being as hacky as you can and cleaning up the hacks when you need to start maintaining the code. You got it right the first time, you'd spend forever. How long have I been working on the game? I think I started in March. It's been a bit on and off, but yeah, it's at the point we have a client. It connects to a server. The server is made up of quite a few separate services. If you're familiar with server architecture, it is using a microservice architecture. The various server components use REST to talk to each other, but the client uses UDP mostly. Yes, the giant chickens. Yeah, I quite enjoy inserting footage of the giant chickens into the videos. Although I replaced them with trolls. I don't know if anyone noticed. It was the same footage, just with trolls instead of chickens in the last episode. Okay, so attributes. We need some attributes now. How do we send through attributes? Form component update. It is an array. Yes. So we've got an array. We've got a name. The name is going to be Oh, well, I need to give it a value, don't I? Not allowed to give it a name like that? What? Not sure what that's about. I think this is going to be a TypeScript weirdness that I'm not allowed to use that. Interesting. Hellfire Squid. If you can let me know what problem you're having on Twitch, that'd be great to know. Is it a latency thing? Is it jittery? It'd be great to know what your issue was over on Twitch. So we're going to set the aggro target. Why doesn't it like this name? Type void is not assignable to... I think I'm just going to have to put it in quotes. That should fix that. Oh, I'm missing a set of braces. There we go. Not on my own end. Awesome. So we're going to set a string value because it's going to be a UUID, and we are going to set it to the player. Oops. Player.id. And this is intentionally a hex value. Well, that's just an issue in here. So the issue here is my protobuf generator. This code here isn't written by me. This actually comes from this protobuf definition. This is protobuf 3, where everything is considered optional. But of course, well, not of course, the generator TypeScript isn't including the optionals. We should technically have question marks on all of these. But I can't edit that code. It'll just get overwritten. So I'm just going to have to, I don't know, can I just force this to be... Well, now I can't find that definition. Import an attribute from, I don't know, code. I think I've got something called proto that I can bring in from there. And then can I do proto dot credit update? There we go. That's really nasty. Oh, that's totally wrong. We actually do that. What I'm going to do for now is I am going to edit the definitions here. This won't actually work. But, because it'll get overwritten, but it might actually let me get a little further along in my testing. That is a different error now. Missing the type. So it's missing, transform. Yeah, again, I don't want to include the transform. I wonder if the protobuf generator has an option for adding these optional fields. But, all right, so yeah, I need entity update, the transform. Well, they do say this one's allowed to be undefined. do I just need to specify that? Okay. Undefined. Okay, that's fair enough. These ones I can change to proto.updateType.update now. Got that definition in here. The other one, there it is. It's not going to have a new. Okay. So in theory, this will now call out to the server and set a new attribute on that troll. Let's make sure that this all makes sense. This is an async function. We're running inside a loop, and we are just going to await the result of that. Just ignore the result. Now, if I restart the server, restart's probably not entirely necessary. With the server coming up, I should now be able to ask for all of the entities. Server's not up for some reason. Oh, server crashed. That's not a good sign. Just going to bring the service down. See if we can get an error message out of this thing. Oh, there is I've got a little red mark over here. It doesn't like something I've said here. Yeah. This is why they don't use... Oh, what's my mouse done? Oh, there we go. Sorry if I just clipped out or just got some jitter then. My CPU seems to have just peaked for some reason. Okay, so I think the issue there was that some of the code that they wrote in the protobuf generator was assuming that those services were, that those parameters were not optional. Here we go. This looks much better. Just wait for all the services to come up. I think all the services are up. Nope. There is the last of them coming up now. Okay, so I will need to put the troll back in. But notice that when I'm putting the troll in... Yeah, TypeScript is... it's... Someone was mentioning that they... yesterday that they aren't familiar with TypeScript and they prefer... that they only really know Python. And I find it actually really similar to Python in that you... yeah, similar to Python in that you can just prototype really quickly in it. It's got similar concepts of asynchronous programming. So if you know Python, I think TypeScript is really easy to pick up. But you can see here that as I put the troll in, I am not putting in the agent state. So let's insert that troll. We can see the player coming in. This, we'll just pull that one out. A new player in. I'll show the donut. Oh, we've got two players in. The other one will go away, hopefully, in a minute. So here is... It's my camera. Here is the donut. There we go. I won't leave it right away. New job uses C# and TypeScript. Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly the two technologies I'm using here to build this infrastructure. Okay, I am going to have to delete that other player because they're not getting cleaned up. Let's just find their ID. Let's just take a guess. Well, it's probably this player. Let's find their ID. And then, in theory, I should be able to just delete that entity. Yeah, okay. Something is not getting cleaned up. Okay, let's just start from scratch. Delete all the entities. Put the troll back in. Load the player into the game. Yeah, something's not right there. Okay. So, in theory, we'll just make sure that the player is definitely within range of the troll. So a couple of TypeScript people here. Excellent. Hopefully, when I'm doing stupid things, you can point it out to me. I've never actually used TypeScript professionally. I've used Node. I've done a lot of React, but never TypeScript. So any pointers would be greatly appreciated. I'm new to TypeScript. Now, if we look at the agent, I was really hoping that we would have an agent state on here. So now I need to work out why this has not added the component. And the best way to do that is going to be to come into the entity controller, find where the update is coming through. Here is the update.type. Throw a breakpoint on there. I'm going to have to somehow work out how to skip over the updates coming from the client. Probably just a conditional breakpoint should do the trick. Now, for those who were watching yesterday, you'll know that I do have troubles with my debug environment. It just seems to, when it hits a breakpoint too early, it seems to just crash the target. Is that hopefully up? And then if I re-enable my breakpoints, here we go, that looks better. Did we get the right update? No, this looks like a player update. So what I'll do, copy value. I'll put a conditional breakpoint on here, entity.id not equal to that. Keep it running. And now I'm not hitting any breakpoints. So that suggests that I am not sending stuff to the right endpoint or something like that. I think this is going to be pretty straightforward. Send updates. About how often I'm streaming. Yesterday was the first time I've streamed, and I'm mainly doing it to get myself a bit more comfortable thinking and talking at the same time. At the moment, I'm thinking of streaming Australian workdays, about an hour per day. But we'll see how I go. Some days I might not feel like it, or I might be pushing to get stuff done. I'm definitely not as productive coding while streaming as I would be if I were just straight coding. So I'll just have to see how I go. Current plan, about an hour a day, Monday to Friday Australian time. So that's US, that's I guess Sunday evenings through to Thursday evenings. And then of course the devlog. Now planning to be on a fortnightly schedule, so that will come out Sunday morning US time. Uh, there won't be one this weekend, but there will be one next weekend. All right, so why isn't this working? Let's come in here and debug the ticker service and just see the call coming through. Okay, so we have an ID, we have an update. What is in the update? This all looks fine. ID, does the ID look right? Have an entity ID. This ID field looks like a legitimate target. Comparing it to the troll, its ID looks like that. The important bit, I think, that will identify it is the 80CF. 80CF. So it does look like we're sending it to the correct ID. That is the correct endpoint. They have other code that comes through here. So I definitely need to catch that failing in the entity service. I have seen an issue. I did have an issue before. I've got quite a silly interface here. The update service, rather than taking a single update bundle, it takes a list of updates. Let me just make sure that we are passing through a list. So let's bring it up, put a breakpoint in the controller. Right at the start. Okay, this looks like a troll update coming through. We've got that 80CF there. What has come across on the wire? We do have a generic component. It does have agent state. So as we step down, let's just disable any other breakpoints we have. Let's get rid of that breakpoint. Come down into here. We don't have a transform, so that should skip over that bit of code. Oh, yeah, this would do it. I'm actually missing the piece of code that allows components to get updated through this interface. I am really surprised I didn't write that. Okay, what I'll do then, something is using up all my CPU, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shut this down. It's going to close Unity for now. I'm going to very quickly just restart my my editor. Let's just cancel that. Let's stop the server gracefully. Yeah, that'd do it. That it's one of those things where once you realize you've forgotten to write some code. So let's just restart that. Okay. So what have we got here? This handles if it's an update. We need to say if, well, update.generic component. So for each generic component request, we need to map that. Now, one of the things that's going to be difficult here is technically I could get an update request on the entity that includes delete requests on components. So I'll ignore that for now. I'll actually put a handle deletion requests in here. I'm not sure what the Mongo request would look like if I were updating some stuff and deleting other stuff, but it's a perfectly reasonable use case. In fact, I think I'll need that to properly implement this AI because I need to remove the aggressive target attribute sometimes. Oh, I guess I could just set it to null or something like that. Okay, handle deletion requests in here. For a component, we need to do component update. Const component updates is going to equal that. Just going to pass these through straight directly into the Mongo document. I don't think we have to structure them as Mongo documents. I hope not, because I find the Mongo document structure really quite strange. So if component update type is equal to update, oh yeah, I make lots of mistakes. And I can spend an hour or two on just some silly little bug that was a missing character or missing +1 or something like that. Everyone does it. I've been coding a very long time. I've been software developer for 20, 25 years. And yes, everyone makes the same mistakes. And an update. So what are we trying to do in here? I ultimately need to return an item here that's going to be of the form type, component type. This says, what have I done? There we go. Attributes. And then in here, this needs to be a list of objects what do we call our attribute types? And name, and then we need the various values. It's going to be name, So that's the kind of thing we're trying to return from here. And I write this as a single expression. It'd be a lot easier if I could. Type, that would be the component update.type. Then I wanted attributes. Now I want this to be a list of generated things, so here I'm going to have to do a map. Now each one of these is going to need to be one of these. And now I can do this as a one-liner, but I find it much clearer not as one-liners here. Sorry, not as a one-liner. I could do it as a braceless expression, but I prefer to keep the braces in here. Here we've got name, and this needs to be attrUpdate.name. Hang on a second, this stuff's already in the right format. Isn't it? It is already in the right format. So I think I can actually just do that. In fact, really all I'm doing is stripping out the update type. No, this is wrong. This comment here is wrong. What I'm actually meaning to return here is something in this form. So I need to collapse these attribute things down into a key value map. Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. Update type. Let's fix this comment. This is meant to be key value. That. So now, because we need to return just an object here, it's going to be like an object containing all the keys and values. Map is actually incorrect here because, here we go, that's not meant to be a list. That is the key here. If you look at an example component, to prove this is right, if you look at an example component, attributes is not a list. It is an object, which means map cannot be used here. So I'm going to have to use reduce. Anyone who's not familiar with a reduce operation, you supply a function which is a result and the next item, and you collapse that item into that result. Don't worry too much if you don't understand this. I do recommend learning it if you don't know it. But all we do here is we're going to say return a new object. So result will be, it'll start out as an empty object, and then it'll iteratively have each of the attributes added to it. So what we want to return in here is whatever the previous result was, but we want to add a new item in here, which is item.name, and then we need the value. Let's just support strings for now, so this is going to be item.stringValue to do support other types. Now we do need to tell the reduce operation what its starting state is, which is an empty object. So what this will now do is it will start with an empty object, it'll pass it in as result, the first item from attributes, which will append the key and value into the object. Then it'll call us again with that single item in the object and the second item. I haven't used link in C#. I've used little bits of it. I've used like the select and where clauses or whatever they are. But yeah, I've never used anything kind of more advanced like reduction. Okay, so is this what we want? This looks close. It doesn't compile, but we do that. We put a brace on that. That brace. I think we've got too many braces. Does it look right? I think it looks right. So what do we got here? This will take the generic components, which are coming through in that expanded out format. For each component update, assuming it is an update, it will set the type, and then it will flatten the attributes. I think this looks pretty good. I'm tempted just to fix this now. Okay, I'll test the code first. Make sure it kind of works. Oh, yeah, certainly. Request that I move my base. I most certainly can. Cast cam that over there, and then there we go. Okay. Yes, I'll test this, and then I will actually fix this to do, because that's going to come back and bite me really soon. The moment I try and store a timestamp or something like that on an item, this is all going to break. Be up and running. Do I not have any entities? Well, something's broken. Oh no, it's not broken. I have somehow... I've overwritten the... So it's kind of worked. It has written out the state that I wanted, but it's written it over the first item in this array. And so this is going to be something to do with Mongo. MongoDB add item to collection. But what I really need to do, I need to insert the item only if it doesn't exist. Otherwise, I will... I think this is called upsert. I think I've heard something... MongoDB upsert, I think I've heard used before. Yeah, that looks like Griffith. That sounds right. My concern is my schema is quite heavily nested. So if I just pop over to my schema, so I sit on top of Mongoose, which applies a schema on top of Mongo, and entity is the top level. In here, we store the components, which is its own document. And we apply the updates at the entity level. So I need to make sure that I can upsert the component. My only reason for using Mongo is it was fairly easy to get set up document store. So I was specifically after a document store. I could have done this with key value, but I need to be able to do operations exactly like this. And if I were to use something like Redis and just do my own key value management, then it's not as clear to me that it would be all that clean. Whereas I know that Mongo can do operations like this. I just need to find the magic within Mongo. That said, I don't think I've ever used Mongo before. I've definitely used Redis. And I have used document stores similar to Mongo before. So yeah, in short, I wanted a document store rather than a key value store. And Mongoose just seemed like the obvious choice. I haven't run into any bugs in Mongoose yet. I mean, I'm not using it in anger. It's got some weirdnesses. Like I had a nasty bug with these. If I didn't set strict query to false, it would just swallow misspelt query parameters, which was pretty annoying. So what I need to do, I need to work out how to apply the upsert at the nested level. And I don't think... What's array filters? Yeah, Griffic, that is probably the approach I'm going to go for here. I was hoping to be able to just dispatch this as a single request, though. But having the components as separate documents, top-level documents, might be the way to go for me here. Interesting. Recommended not to use nested documents. Okay. So I may well just factor this out. I mean, I can... So all I've got to do to achieve that is add the entity reference onto the component, correct? Is that if you could correct me if I'm wrong there. If I add the... let's just come back here. So if I add the entity ID in here, I'm just going to do it as that. And then whenever I need to do one of these updates, I'd issue an update against this. I'd update a number of updates against any components that needed to be updated, and just make sure the entity ID lined up. Is that the kind of thing? Yeah, the unique ID, it would be like _ID, which automatically gets applied and is unique. Yeah, excellent. Okay. So that is likely what I'll do. Thank you very much for that, Griffic. Yes, update takes a query, so that lets me choose how the upsert works. I was kind of hoping that the nested... Like, can you upsert nested in Mongo? Like if I can specify a query, yeah, so I'll definitely be following your advice there, Griffic. I'm just hoping I might be able to just get a proof of concept going. Yeah, so this looks like I can conceivably do it, but I don't want to be putting queries like this into Mongo. I don't want to be generating the queries like that. All right. So yeah, I am going to have to change this schema. All right, so I'm going to stop the server. I'm going to delete my entities just so that I don't have to migrate them. And then let's make this change to the schema. Now, in here, because I'm going to be processing these anyway, I won't store this as an object ID. If you could correct me if that's a stupid thing for me to consider, Graphic, that'd be appreciated. But my plan here is to actually store these as strings, because I do convert the IDs to and from strings all the time. And I think it's going to make my API simpler. No, because I need to be able to do equality tests on these. So, let's do object ID. So I corrected myself, I think, there. So that has the entity ID. We're no longer going to store these against the entity. Yeah, I'm not too worried about performance at this point in time. I will be, obviously, in the future, but yeah, it's good to know that I can set them as a unique ID. Yes. So hang on, Griffith, are you suggesting I could in fact do leave a components array in here that was actually pointing off to the object IDs, pseudocode here, and effectively make this, well, basically unique object IDs? Is that effectively what you're saying? So that I could more easily index them later? Sorry, there's a bit of lag on the stream. But yeah, if that's what you mean, then yeah, that would be pretty cool. But for now, I have turned this relationship around, and we got here. So now I just need to change my code. Yeah, okay, thanks, Graphic. That makes sense. Okay, so this code is going to need to be very heavily changed. So anytime I access the components within an entity, I need to do that as a separate query dispatch. That's fine. Anytime I query by component, I need to search the component entities rather than the entities, and then work out which entity they were part of. So it'll be 3 queries. That's fine. Go into the databases control panel. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, there is a bit of lag between the comments and the stream. So you're probably typing these comments like 10 seconds ago and I'm replying to them only now. I think I've got a setting in YouTube where I can actually reduce that. Not sure what impact it would have on the quality, the visual quality of the stream, but I might try that in a future stream. Yeah, as I said before, Griffith, it's good to know that I can get the performance out of it, but it's definitely not a priority. If you can get messages through this system in under 100 milliseconds, then this is going to work absolutely fine for having a handful of players on. It becomes a question of latency versus load. Even with lots and lots of players in the system, if I architect it correctly, the latency shouldn't change all that much as the number of players goes up. It's just the load that should go up. So throwing more nodes at the cluster should help solve that problem. So with indexes turned on, yeah. And if Mongo doesn't meet the performance requirements, then I can just change this piece of code and replace it with something else. I'm not all that attached to Mongo. And one of the advantages of microservice infrastructure, of microservice architecture, is that I can just replace this entity service with something that depends on a different backend. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so the first things I'm going to need are, I might do this port of this controller across to the new schema, and then I'll finish up the stream after that. So the first operation I need to update yeah, on the topic of other databases, I think that Amazon has one as well that's I think is based on Mongo, or it's got a similar API to Mongo. And I do intend to run this on Amazon. So I'll probably go with whatever they have if it's able to perform. Let's see. It could run on Azure, but it's a matter of me being a lot more familiar with AWS than Azure. I have a lot of experience setting up fairly complex services on Amazon, so it's just the one I'd go for. I don't see any benefit in going for one over the other than familiarity in setting it up. I think they're both fairly equivalent. I mean, Azure has some better services for things like they've got better queue services than Amazon. Amazon's queue service is just straight out weird. It's not very full featured. But then in where their services are no good, it's easy enough just to run your own, I don't know, RabbitMQ or something sitting inside Docker. But yeah, the only thing I really know of that Azure does better than Amazon that I'd care about is their queuing. Their queue service is awesome on Azure. Yeah, on the control panel, I tend not to use the control panel in Amazon. I use CloudFormation for everything. It just kind of lets you specify everything in code in YAML and not have to deal with their horrible control panel. But it also makes it harder to break things because everything's documented, everything's in version control, and it just applies the changes that you need. Azure, of course, has similar features. Okay, so when we want to fetch all, we do want to start by grabbing all of the entities. Now, the naive way of doing this would be then for each entity to go and fetch its components, but that would be silly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the whole Azure. Azure feels like a real American thing to me. Every time I hear someone pronounce it Azure, I'm like, components. So I am actually just going to go and grab all of the components. Oh, Asia. Azure. Never heard that one. We need Yeah, it was a strange for them to go with a name that no one knew how to pronounce. Okay, so what have I got here? I'm trying to export. Okay, how do I get this? Hoping I'd be able to get the component from in there. Client.model, what's it complaining about here? Oh, yeah, this is just, I've defined that. There we go. Expose the component type. Fetch all component. So we've grabbed all the entities, grabbed all of the components, because I know we're going to have to map them all back in. And then I need to stitch them back together. Entity is going to go to do a dot filter on that. If I just, it's not called filter in TypeScript. All right, any TypeScript people, if you could happen to know why what I'm doing wrong here, that would be great. Filter component dot entity ID equal to entity dot ID. This is something really silly, isn't it? Let's make that explicit. It's not going to like that. Oh, this. Does my DTO take? Yep, takes an any. Yeah, it is filter on an array. I believe this is returning an array. I'm just going to be explicit about these. Let's make them arrays. Yeah, that was a bit silly. There we go. Forgot to give the attribute a name. Can I get rid of those now? No, it doesn't like that. To do strict true. I believe strict true is enabled by default. So I have I have strict query set to false, but I believe that that only has an effect if strict is true. In TS in TS config. Yes, I do, and I do intend to leave strict enabled. I will just put some proper typing on these at some point. I don't like to leave stuff. I really like the typing of TypeScript, so I'll just keep my to-do here and fix this at some point in the future. Okay, so that should return all of the entities. Now when we go and do a let's do fetch next. Well, fetch. So we're going to find an entity, and then nice to know, Griffic. I will actually put that as a to-do. Fetch all. Because I'd rather push any work I can off to the database. I will look up compass. Make a note of that off screen. Okay, back to fetch. Okay, I do need component. Find, and we want any who have an entity ID of type Mongo ID. Stitch those components into the entity as it gets converted to a DTO. Create. So this needs to strip the components out first. Entity equal to entity. So yeah, I just noticed I'm using any in here as well. I obviously need to define these types. So we pull out the components, we do that, we need to create the bare entity. So the other thing I'm obviously going to need to do in here is find a way of dispatching these two queries out, preferably atomically. I have no doubt that is possible. Mongo. Created components, make that one created entity. Yeah, I'm going to have to quickly look up how to do a... let's just insert mini, or update mini, I guess. Create mini. The front end is in C#, building the front end in Unity. The chances of this code working are slim to none on the first attempt, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so this code should probably get a bit simpler now, this update code, because I no longer need to stitch the components into the entity. Yes, I am familiar with the promise.all, the performance benefit of it, and I know I should be doing it. But I do find the code a little bit simpler when with async functions. I find the code simpler when you just kind of chain them together. But if I need to, I will use promise all. I do use promise all elsewhere. For example, when I need to do a for each on an array, I quite like to just return the. I quite like to return the array of promises and then do promise.all on that. But in this case, I know that it's not the best performance, but I find the code a lot more readable. Okay. So in here, anytime my code works first go, I always assume that I'm obviously missing some nasty edge case, because nothing ever works first go. So in here, I need to do... Oh, this is going to get much simpler. The deletion requests are going to be simpler, because it's now a separate phase. I can treat it as a separate phase rather than trying to do it all in one go. So if we've got a transform, then I need to dispatch this request right away, right? Yes, in fact, this just comes up. I mean, yeah, I guess going back to the promise stuff, I guess it's not so bad if instead of an await in here, yeah, if I instead just do just catch that entity promise, later down here I'll do a components promise, and then in here I can do the promise.all. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, maybe I should be doing that a bit more. So here we have our component updates. Let's just make this a components promise. Oh, hang on. That's silly. Let's update. How exactly did they trick you into learning a language, Hellfire? Okay, so here. What's the type of that? Yep, that is an object ID. Good. So for anyone that is that hasn't been here the whole stream, I was working on the AI for the troll. Ran into some issues with the way that entity data was being stored, and so I'm currently doing a bit of a refactor of the way that entity data is stored in the server. Okay. So we store that. We've now got our component updates. Const components promise is going to be equal to component dot insert many. I assume insert many is the correct call. I'm sure Griffic will tell me if this is the wrong call. Oh, this is no. I want to be doing it up. Yes, I need to do a whole bunch of updates in here. But I can't do update many, I don't think. That only takes a single filter parameter, doesn't it? DB update many. So no, I can't use update many. So if Griffic is still there and is able to point me to the right function, otherwise I will just do I'll just dispatch a whole bunch of separate updates. It's not great, but component promises, component updates dot, going to map those component dot update. Yeah, so I'll just dispatch them. This is a case where I obviously do want to use promise.all then, because this could be a large number of requests all going out in parallel. Component.update. I mean, this is a... I need to do this as an upsert, don't I? Is that a top-level function in Mongoose? Find out. We'll just check that that is a real function. Yeah, all right, I'll do this. Find one and update. We give it the ID, which is... Ah, I can't. Find one and update. Yeah, query. This I can. We need to know all of them that have an entity ID and also have then attributes.name. I think I'm going to run into the same problem here, Graphic. Oh no, attributes I did set as a, let me just check my my schema. I think attributes I made a map in the end. This I no longer use. And attributes, yes, it is indeed a map. So yeah, so it sounds like I might need to get rid of Mongoose. I really quite like the way that it kind of wrangles all your wrangles all the fields in and out. I quite like. Component. Yeah. Component update entity ID, and I also need to set attribute name is going to be, no, that's not meant to be that anyway. It's meant to be type. Give me component update type. Yeah, okay. I'll keep on using Mongoose and hopefully get queries like this one out to the lower level driver. Find one and update. Wrong here, doesn't like component update. That seems strange. How could I possibly? Yes. So the issue here is that if I'm just going to put a dot filter I think I can do that. Fortunately, TypeScript isn't working out the typing there. So I'll just have to wrangle that in. I can't remember in Node if null is... So null and undefined are not the same thing. Okay, that'll just get rid of the items where the update type is not update. That's all right. So in here, we do that find. We then need to update, which is the component update. And then in here, we're going to do that. This will take iterables. So let's give it component promises and the entity promise. The one that got me when I was writing my tests for my coordinate system yesterday, the one that got me is that, where is it? -0. Oh, it is equal, but in tests, it's obviously using a different kind of comparison, but my tests were failing because some of my calculations were coming out to -0, and that was when they were actually 0. They should have been 0, but it was a bit frustrating. Missing a weight. Yep. case we will await. This won't compile. Why not? I'm missing a brace. Thanks for joining, Ifman. I'm not going to be going too much longer anyway, but thank you very much for joining, and yeah, see you next time. Okay, what doesn't it like here? Component dates. Oh yeah, I can't do that. Okay, apparently that'll compile. We try it. Watch it crash and burn. I will likely finish up the stream very soon. In fact, I was only planning on streaming for an hour. It's coming up. Okay, we have no entities. That's to be expected. If we add in the troll, then it crashes. Where were we? Entities controller line 50. I write this code? Apparently. Yes, this is trying to pull the ID out of the object that comes back. Created entity apparently does not have an ID on it. Why not? Created entity. I mean, this is wrong here. That should be created components. I'll fix that in a second. Created entity has doc, JSON ID. Why has my ID format changed? That seems weird. This is a buffer. Yeah, correct, Griffith. That components should be created components, but I'm expecting the ID field to be coming from inside here. I think that I actually need to be passing through doc in here. I'll fix this line as well. Is that correct? Does 2DTO... No, it should be pulling out that underscore doc by itself. There's no ID field. There was before. I mean, this is fine. I just need to pull it out a different way. I just don't understand why the ID has moved. This isn't actually meant to be there anymore. That was a piece of debug I was doing earlier. These should be OIDs. So these are the IDs that get added to the schema automatically by Mongoose, and I don't believe I changed that. So I'm not sure why what's coming back from well, I should really understand it, shouldn't I? Um, so previously, the result of this included an underscore ID that that had an ID field under it, whereas now that only exists under ID. So I don't believe I changed that code. I must have messed something up in the schema. But for now, I'll just see if this works, because I just need the ID from anywhere. I have my own UUID type that's able to convert to and from kind of UUIDs, byte arrays. Remember what other formats it supports? MongoDBs, Mongo IDs. What have we got here? Step in here. Make sure that this has a value. It does. Well, that's a sign that I've done something silly. If the ID coming out of Mongo is more than 16 bytes, because they're normally only 12 bytes. So I'll just get a breakpoint in there. It's this guy. It's a buffer of 12. Okay, so we are getting some number of bytes in. It's 12 bytes. This is going to be something really silly. Hmm. A little bit confused about that. I'm not sure where it's getting 24 from. Two, three, four, five, six. Um, I mean, I don't understand why it would be getting a different number of bytes here, but if I be explicit about it, rid of this breakpoint. Come in here. And that is still the wrong length. All right, I'm going to have to take a break anyway, and then I'll get this sorted out. Uh, what day is it today? Friday, my time. So my plan is to stream again next Monday, so Sunday evening US time. And I might throw a post up just telling people how I went with debugging this, so you guys can see that it actually all went through. So I do want to thank you all for joining me here today. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. And yes, thank you. And thank you, Griffith, for all your help. Really, really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you all next